We are at the Brooklyn Park Library branch, and it is 4:09 p.m. And I officially call this meeting to order for the last time. First, it's been a ride. It's been a ride. We'll start off with a welcome to the Brooklyn Library branch by our great new branch manager. I think this is your first time introducing the board to Brooklyn.
Yes, not my first time presenting to you all. I did a brief presentation about library services a few months ago before I got cut off.
Yes.
But
Fun times.
yes,
We're living.
COVID
Yeah.
time. But on behalf of our staff and myself, welcome to the Brooklyn Park Library. Our building was built in 1971, but we've been serving this community since 1955. My name is Katie Zawadi, as Will said. I'm the branch manager here, and I'll be celebrating my first anniversary this August. I've been working with the library system for 9 years as a librarian at Glenbury and in our programming and outreach department. But before that, I was also a volunteer engaged at the Suburban Park Library, so I've been around for quite some time. Speaking of programming and outreach, some are at your libraries right now, so don't forget to sign up. You can come and see us at the information desk, and we'll help you out with that. So we employ 15 part-time and full-time staff here, and we serve a vibrant community both inside and outside of the library. Most of our users come in to use our computers and Wi-Fi, but I just looked it up today. Our top circulation items are children's fiction and adult nonfiction and our DVD collection. We do host a social worker here in this room 3 days a week. In addition to providing social services, she also runs a baby pantry out of the closet right in this hallway. We work very closely with the community of Hope on many different projects, including the social worker. And we provide them space 1 day a week where the director, Myzetta Wilson, comes and works out of the building. We were recently recarpeted this March, and we took advantage of that time to do several building improvements. So I invite you to explore our building after this meeting to see all of the updates that we've done. We are also working with Watershed Stewards Academy this fall to do some outdoor beautification projects, including a sensory garden and planting trees as part of the replanting. So with that, if you have any questions about our branch or community, please let me know and I'll try and get you an answer.
And also, I know our regional manager is here. Would you like to say anything?
Oh, yes, I'm Wanda Wagner. I'm the regional manager for the northern area, and we're delighted to be able to host a board meeting here in the northern part of the county. For those of you who may not know me, I've been with the library system 46 years, and I have spent most of my time actually at our Glenbury location. I spent a very small sliver of time at our Proctor location, and my office is currently housed as well. So glad for you to be here.
You know, the saying with Senate President Mike Miller was, governors come and go, but Mike Miller stays. Well, I guess CEOs and chairs want to stay for sure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add something to the minutes.
Yes.
Very early in my life, she was handling it. So I will pursue that any further.
Without objection, so noted. Moving on to the approval of our agenda, just a quick note to make sure we're all on the same page. You will notice under Governance Strategy and Organization Committee, it should say Officer Election Report, just so we know what we're all talking about and we're all on the same page. With that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Ms. Miller moves, Ms. Smith seconds. All those in favor, or any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Now, for the last time, I get to read my favorite statement as board chair, which everyone who watches this skips right to because that's their favorite part. The Maryland Open Meetings Act permits public bodies to close their meetings to the public in special circumstances outlined in the statute of the act to carry out administrative functions exempted within the act as well. The board will vote to reconvene in closed session. As required by law, the vote of the closed session will be recorded. A written statement of the reasons for closing the meeting, including a citation of the authority and a list of the topics to be discussed, is available for public review. That an issue could arise during a closed session that the committee or the board determines that it should be discussed in open session or added to the closed session agenda for discussion. In that event, the board will reconvene in open session to discuss the open session topic or to vote to reconvene in closed session to discuss the additional closed session topic. The meeting will only be closed under the provision to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, any other personal matter that affects one or more specific individuals, and to protect the privacy and reputation of individuals concerning a matter not related to public business. And more specifically, if you are inquiring, the reasons and the topics that we'll be discussing are appointment of new counsel and to approve the redacted version of closed session minutes and to also authorize the public session minutes for transparency purposes. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Ms. Miller moves. Is there a second? Dr. Sack, second. All those in favor, and it's really important for those zooming in that we get an accurate count. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. We are now in closed session. And I think everyone else went somewhere else.
Main thing is we have Joey and he's gonna get Jasmine ready here for the presentation.
Breakout room, they should be back in like 30 seconds.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'll kind of plow through this real quick. Public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make any remarks before the board for 2 minutes? Hearing none, that is very simple. No public comment. Trustee briefing. I believe Dr. Lee is. Does someone else have the YouTube? Oh, we're not streaming this. So maybe I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lee now.
Hi, happy to
Hi,
be
Doctor.
here. Good to see you all again. Familiar faces, folks in the room, folks on the screen. Those of you I haven't met, I'm Jasmine Lee. I use she and her pronouns. I'm excited to be working with Bess and A who are here. I'll let them introduce themselves, especially because I know Bess may not be able to stay as long as we originally planned. But we're happy to be here. We'll be sharing some slides with you that I know were provided in advance. And so that'll just give us about 15 minutes to talk through the slides and hopefully 5 minutes for maybe 1 to 3 questions. We don't want to take up too much of your time and we want to try to stick to the 20 minutes that were allotted to us. So Bess and A, if you want to say hello.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. I'm Bess Langbein, one of the founding partners of Due East. I also use she, her pronouns, and we're really thrilled to be here with you all to share some of the findings and high-level recommendations and make sure you all are on board with the next steps in the process. I unfortunately am not going to be able to stay for the duration, but you're in good hands with Jasmine and Adriana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adriana Weisberg, also an advisor with Dewey's Partners. Here with Jasmine and Bess supporting this process. Excited to hear the findings and then talk about next steps with you all. And Jasmine, I'm happy to share the slides if that's helpful to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're just gonna dive right into this. So we already did a little bit of welcome. The rest of the agenda is there. We're first talk a little bit about what compiled the process for the equity audit, some of the insights and outcomes that we've determined, some findings and recommendations, and then we'll talk a little bit about what is coming next. And in that time frame, we'll also try to talk through a couple of questions that you might have. So first, we'll talk a little bit about some of the audit inputs that came up as a part of this process. So in the first phase of this overall equity transformation kind of journey, and we'll talk about all three phases toward the end, but this first phase was really focused on the equity audit. So essentially gathering as much information as we can, or that we are able to, within the time frame that we had, that we were working with, to determine equity strengths and equity priorities, or excuse me, equity strengths and equity barriers, so that we have a sense of what our equity priorities are, which can then lead into and inform that second phase, which is the design phase, which is going to be coming up right around the corner. So as a part of the equity audit process, these are the things that we did. We engaged with folks in a variety of ways, both internal and external stakeholders. So we attended branch visits, we attended readiness, or held readiness conversations rather, with about 72 people across level, across functional area, internal and external. Then we decided, based on what came out of those focus groups, some hints of difference in experience for folks who identify as folks of color, or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, and folks who identify as LGBTQIA. And so for that reason, we decided to hold 2 additional focus groups, which allowed for us to have some deeper conversation along the lines of those very specific experiences. We had 2 4-week surveys go out, climate surveys using Google Forms, and 161 staff members, which is about 35% response rate. We certainly hoped for a larger percentage, given the amount of buy-in that we seem to have across the organization, but 35% does give us something to work with. And then we had an even smaller amount of folks who responded to the customer survey, only about 495 folks, which is less than 1% when we're thinking about the amount of people that the library services across Anne Arundel County, across the multiple communities within the county. However, this 495 is around the same range as past surveys that have been done through the library and with customers. I think the most recent survey, satisfaction survey, yielded about 463 responses. So we're kind of right in line, even though 1% is a small number. And then in regard to material review, we reviewed policies and practices. And so when I say practices, that means that we were looking at like literal written policies, but we were also eliciting perspectives and thoughts on unwritten practices, expectations, and norms that people function within. So hiring materials, HR handbook. So hiring materials, I mean job descriptions of multiple different types of jobs and their postings as well. Program data and collateral, community statistics, web pages, and resources posted within the branches, both in the corridor area, like when we would first walk in, taking a scan and paying close attention to the resources, but even in most of the branches, there were certain areas within the library that also had specific resources that were targeted at particular types of populations, like senior citizens or older adults in one particular area, or job resources in one particular area. So all of that was included in all of the things that were served as input for the equity audit. Certainly there are a number of things that we could have continued to look at. There's no way to really look at every single possible thing, but these are the things that informed this first phase of the project so far. We can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So the top insights for this slide are as follows. The library is perceived as committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, with areas of growth to operationalize equity. So you'll see in some of the graphs that we have to share, and in the overall report once it's shared, that quantitatively by number, most often people had good things to say about the library, that it feels welcoming, inclusive, et cetera. Anecdotally, though, is where we start to see some areas of growth coming out. So that says to me that the climate is such that people enjoy working and attending and visiting the libraries, and there are some areas of growth that came up in anecdotes. I'm not going to read through all of it because we do have a short period of time, and I'm going to try to speed myself up here. But some other pieces: staff and customer response respondents overwhelmingly see the library as inclusive and equitable, but staff are experiencing some sense of belonging differences based on identity, challenges navigating difficult conversations, and lack of confidence in library leadership to fully commit to equity. There's some overall many positive perspectives from library customers with some respondents feeling the library does not have a role to play in social justice issues. This one I thought was really interesting because what came up is that either people said the library is great, you don't really have to do anything more, just leave it as it is. Or other people kind of said, the library is fine because I just come for books. I don't want to hear all of this other diversity stuff, right? So that's an interesting kind of conundrum. Across all branches, the library demonstrates its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in visual displays, access points, programs, collection materials, and providing a welcoming environment. The branches themselves, both for staff and for customers, is really where people experience the bulk of their sense of belonging. The bulk of celebrations of diversity really is in the branches. Now, that is a little bit different between branches, but overall, it is in the branch, like the branches themselves are a strength. With increased intentionality and clarity around daily practices, the library is well positioned for equity culture change. So again, the general climate is there for this pursuit of equity. There's just some intentionality that is missing that I think that some of the recommendations we have will help strengthen that intentionality in some of those daily practices. You can go ahead to the next slide. So strengths, I already kind of mentioned the one in the left-hand corner, the library. So environment, offerings, and programs are diverse in nature. And within the branches is where most staff feel their highest amounts of sense of belonging in the branches themselves. Other strengths that the library has working for them at the conclusion of the full audit. So some of this is a little bit different than what you heard when I shared with you the early findings, but the early findings are embedded in what we're talking about here. So broad staff buy-in across organization and honesty and candor around needs. People are really committed to be, or really interested in this journey across the library, or at least there is a perception that they are. That's what they've been communicating. For leadership, there is a high levels of executive commitment to equity transformation and high levels of commitment from branch leadership to get it right. And then welcoming and inclusive. Both staff and customers perceive the library as largely welcoming and inclusive, even though there's some things that need to change, some daily practices, some microaggressive experiences that people are having in the workspace. And still, even with some of those experiences, largely respondents are saying that they feel like the library is welcoming and inclusive for the most part. Go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. Some barriers and concerns that we are also still noticing or that came up in some of this work. All staff and communities may or may not actually be ready or interested. So as much as in the early findings, it became clear that there's a lot of buy-in that's coming up. People seem really interested. And though there seems to be some elements of people feeling like this direction of equity may not align or be inclusive of their conservative values, for example, and that is a direct quote, or that they feel like, again, the library should not have anything to do with this, like I just come to get books, right? Or I want a newspaper. Staff diversity and sense of belonging differences. So there is a lack of staff diversity across level and within the branches. It's seen and it's felt, and that is leading to sense of belonging differences. As mentioned, I know that people are experiencing sense of belonging differently across other identities as well. Ability status came up a couple of times, at least twice, but these experiences, being BIPOC and or LGBTQIA, are the ones that continue to rise to the top. There is a lack of confidence that folks have on the part of leadership, not just executive leadership, but also on the part of branch managers and administrators around this long-term commitment and whether or not action will actually come from it. And then difficult dialogue. So it's very clearly there's a lack of trust and like a lack of vulnerability. And people are concerned that they don't have the skills to navigate difficult dialogues with radical honesty, especially if it involves needing to call in someone who holds power around something that they said or behavior that they exhibited. And so really needing to be able to talk about things that are difficult instead of leaning into this false niceness. Go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So we'll talk really quickly about some of the insights. So staff climate survey insights, 81% of respondents see the library as friendly, cooperative, welcoming, inclusive, and respectful, and are comfortable with the workplace, are comfortable with the workplace climate. When disaggregated across various identity points, there was little significant difference, but anecdotes, so I kind of mentioned this earlier, from open-ended discussions communicate, open-ended questions and focus groups, but specifically open-ended questions here communicate some elements of exclusion, discomfort, and lack of belonging along identity differences. The other thing that I will say about when disaggregated is that there was actually a significantly small number of folks of color who completed this survey. And so for that reason, when we disaggregate by race in particular, the numbers become so small that it's a little bit difficult to manipulate them. And so there are some recommendations that we might engage in for future iterations of equity surveys for staff. Staff have an inconsistent knowledge of DEI related policies or where to find them. And leadership is seen as accommodating and welcoming overall by respondents. But again, some individual anecdotes communicate differences in experiences or perceptions of decisions that have been made by leaders. So that is to say that the decisions were likely well-intended. The impact was not what we hoped. Overall, how comfortable are you with workplace climate? So again, to get the 81%, we added very comfortable and comfortable, and that's where we landed. Go ahead to the next slide. How much do you agree or disagree with statements below about processes and policies connected to identity-based experiences or bias incidents? So folks feel really comfortable sharing with library sharing their concerns with their branch staff. But then the other questions you see neutral or unsure rise to the top. So that's what I'm saying when I say this inconsistent knowledge of policies and practices. So AACPL has a policy for community members and customers to anonymously or non-anonymous, report bias incidents in the library. Unsure, right? Bias incident reporting process is clearly communicated on their website. Unsure. Bias incident reporting process is clearly communicated in branch postings. Unsure. Right? So that's what we see here. Go ahead to the next slide. How welcoming would you say that the library workplace climate is for staff members who are? And then you see some options here, perhaps folks who are BIPOC, folks who are transgender, non-binary or genderqueer, immigrants, housing or food insecure, over 60 years old, and the list goes on. Overall here, you see again, between what very welcoming or moderately welcoming, people are mostly saying that the library is welcoming. What's interesting is that they're saying the library is particularly welcoming for BIPOC folks, particularly welcoming for folks who are over 60, particularly welcoming for parents or caregivers, which is kind of inconsistent with some of the anecdotes. Again, so that's interesting, right? Because some of the policies that people were asking for in relation to parental, for example, is a parental leave, a really clear, explicit parental leave policy. And yet people here are saying that the library is actually really welcoming to parents. So that's just an interesting dichotomy there. But again, you see that people largely are saying that the library is welcoming across multiple identities. How accommodating is AACPL leadership towards staff members who are? And the list is exactly the same. We just don't have it listed vertically, it's listed horizontally. And again, you kind of see overall that the leadership is accommodating toward, right? People see it as accommodating toward, but then you also see an increase in this unsure, haven't observed. And so when I say before about this idea around intentionality and daily practices, largely it's because people are not thinking about it, right? People are just showing up and experiencing the library from their own lived experience and not considering the impact of decisions, behaviors, and actions on people who are not like them. And that is indicated here in the fact that they're like, I don't know if the library is accommodating to these folks, right? Because I haven't been thinking about it, haven't observed it. Customer climate survey here. So largest respondents groups came from Odenton, Severna Park, Bush Annapolis, Crofton, and Broadneck branches. It does not capture a broad voice from customers, right? We already talked about it's a less than 1%, especially when we're thinking about customers with language barriers, customers with access barriers, customers who need actual like literal sit down next to me support while I'm completing the survey, right? So those are the things we would think about in future iterations. Ongoing climate surveys should happen at least once a year. 96% of the respondents, however, regardless of the small number, find that the library is welcoming, accessible, and helpful with a welcoming staff. 74.6% of respondents feel the library is a place where they belong and feel represented in offerings across multiple identities. One direct quote from a focus group is that I found home in the library, right? Which I thought was really beautiful. Respondents appreciate the collection materials, offerings, and programs provided by the library. And 37% feel that the library doesn't need to make, don't feel, thank you. The library needs to make any changes to its diversity, equity, and inclusion approaches, processes, work, programs, events. They're literally just saying like, you all are doing a great job and just keep doing that. And so that's a little bit about the customer survey. So we'll show you some graphs that kind of illustrate some of these pieces. So again, this demonstrates how people responded across the library with those largest numbers connected to the folks I had mentioned, Bush Annapolis, Severna Park, et cetera, Odenton, Crofton. Overall, how welcoming is the branch environment you frequent most? So again, largely welcome, very welcoming or moderately welcoming. Very few people are seeing the library as not welcoming. Go ahead to the next slide. Does the branch you frequent most feel like a place where you belong and feel included just because of who you are? Again, overwhelmingly yes. In this case, but then we also had some folks who were kind of saying, I don't know, I guess I never thought about it. Perhaps again, because they're saying, I don't come to belong, I come to like borrow a book, I come to borrow a newspaper, I come to print something for free, right? Or what have you. So it's just something that they're not necessarily thinking about, but people who are thinking about it feel like it's a place where they belong. Same question, or not the same question, sorry. Question about print books, audiobooks, and materials provided by the branch, and whether or not it represents, whether or not people see themselves as represented in the offerings. And you see, again, between the blue and the red, that overwhelmingly people are feeling like they feel represented and they see themselves in the offerings that are provided by the library, whether it's books or programs or what have you. In this case, print books, audiobooks, and other materials, but they were also asked about programs and events as well. The one that is interesting here about having looked unsure are connected to ability status and then connected to religion and spirituality. And again, I think that just has to do with the fact that I don't know that people think that those identities should be something that's represented in materials, et cetera. But when I'm thinking about sense of belonging, when I'm thinking about equity, it is important that people enter into spaces and they see themselves in materials on the wall, regardless of their identity. But people are saying simply that they haven't looked, not that they disagree. Go ahead to the next slide. Do you think the library needs to make improvements in their approaches to diversity, equity, and inclusion? So again, many folks are saying no, 37% of folks are saying no. Excuse me, 25% of folks are saying yes, but then that largest percentage are people who are saying, hadn't even thought about it, actually. Like, why are you even asking me this question kind of idea? Go ahead to the next slide. And so then we'll shift quickly here to some recommendations and then give you an opportunity to ask some questions. Our slide went away.
I'm just going to pull up our other deck for the recommendations, and we can pause here to see if anyone has any questions before we dive in.
Yeah. Questions so far?
Are there any questions?
Reactions?
The members?
So I have a question about how the data were gathered, and just by way of disclosure, I'm a data scientist by training, so I apologize for this. But one of the problems with qualitative data, and I didn't see your instrument, so I'm not sure if you were your survey included both the quantitative and area. It had both.
Both. Yep.
Well, what happens is there's a pretty profound selection bias that's built into those kinds of things, where people who have something very specific to say are far and away most likely to provide anecdotes, and I'm sure you know all about this.
Mhm.
So it's important to trace those anecdotes because they tell us, they give us almost like an ethnographic perspective, but it's also very narrow. We have to be careful not to extrapolate that across the larger sample or population. So
Yeah.
how confident do you feel that kind of some of the anecdotes that you saw have broader representation, or are you more comfortable just saying these are examples of one responder, these are thoughts from one responder?
Such a great question. So let me first start off by saying I appreciate that you're a data scientist, and that my first response to you must be that I am a qualitative researcher. And so for me, I value greatly lived experiences. I value greatly the N of one. So one experience matters to me significantly, which I know sometimes for quantitative researchers is really challenging to accept. So I just wanted so that you just know where my frame of reference is and like where I'm coming from, so that you hear in my response, like that's where it all starts for me, is usually lived experiences and qualitative methods. However, having said that, yeah, I agree with you completely that, and which is why I continue to say kind of like the quantitatively people are saying this. And then in their anecdotal responses, they're kind of saying something differently, right? And so for me, it is important to acknowledge those inconsistencies, certainly use the quantitative data as a measure of like, this is what people are saying about us. And then my thought is that we should be using the anecdotes and the responses and the narratives to help color the data. So even though people are saying it is a welcoming space, it's, to me, the anecdotes are telling us it would be more welcoming if we did these couple of things. And for me, while I wouldn't necessarily extrapolate it across the entire data set, what I would say is that there were enough of the similar feeling anecdotes to say that enough people, at least by way of respondents, are experiencing something similar. So some of the anecdotes that came up in response to the open-ended questions reiterated some things that came from the focus groups, which also reiterated things that came from the readiness conversations. And all of those were different people every single time. So people really kind of, I can't think of the word I want to use, bolstered each other's arguments unknowingly for some of the qualitative pieces. I do think for future surveys or for future processes of this nature, probably we would want to do the survey. What am I saying? Probably would want to do the survey first, and then use the insights from the survey to inform qualitative methods that I would want to do second, like the focus groups, et cetera, after collecting the quantitative methods. But this is the approach that we used this year. I'm happy to share the instrument with you. It was shared with the executive leadership team before we sent it out.
The only thing I would end with, and your points are well taken, the only thing that I would end with is that there's a lot of value at looking at the response to the quantitative questions, assuming that the data are available that show the relationship between the responders. And so if you see that there's a predisposition towards people's response and sort of more negative anecdotal responses in the qualitative, there's a lot of value in that as well. Mm-hmm. So what you can almost do is you can see, you can at least extrapolate people that tend to respond in a common way using the quantitative part of the instrument, how those people are responding anecdotally, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's all. Shut up.
No, thank you. I appreciate your questions.
That's why I'm studying law and not data science.
Brooke, we see you've got a question too. I just want to quick time check. We're going to try and wrap up within 5 minutes. So we'll move through the next part pretty quickly. I'm sure a lot of people have questions. So if it's okay with Skip, maybe we'll take your question, Brooke. And then if there are others, Skip, if you could collect those, and then Jasmine can respond to them following the session. Does that work?
Works great.
We know this is a lot of information, so we want to make sure that people have a chance to digest it and ask
I would
those
just
questions.
say to all the trustees, keep that in mind. Send me any questions you have about this and I'll get them on to Jasmine. Thank you.
Thank you. Brooke, go ahead.
So given the, I noticed that the most responses that we're getting are from our less diverse locations. So how accurate is this data when you look at that?
I mean, that's a really great question. Not only how accurate is this data when I look at that, but also how accurate is the data when it's less than 1%, right? Like I mean, there's just not a lot of people there, right? And so I don't know that the argument is necessarily about whether or not the data is accurate, because it is accurate for the people who responded. It is just not, it is not representative of the 500,000 plus people that are served by the library, right? Like it is not representative in that way of the broad communities that are served by the library, but it is accurate for the folks who responded.
Sure. I guess my concern is that we're doing this on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if we're having, if we're not having a diverse set of people who are answering the questions, what benefit does that give us for DEI? I mean, I don't know. It's a little disappointing that we didn't get responses from different communities, more communities.
Yeah. So I do have a couple of responses to that. Both my first response has nothing to do with the library, and then my second response, it does. So my first response is that I can share with you as a person who does survey work frequently around DEI specifically. Folks of color get sick of answering these questions, to be completely honest. And so at some point you just stop taking surveys. I deliver surveys and I don't fill them out because I just don't want to answer anymore about whether or not I belong when I told you that I don't. Right. So that's part of it, is that there's just an overall challenge around survey fatigue for folks of color or folks a part of other marginalized communities who are getting constantly asked questions about their experiences in that way. However, for the library specifically, what I would say is that we do have some recommendations in the report that talk about some ways that we can think about how to do this differently to increase the response level of folks of color and or folks who are a part of other marginalized communities for that matter.
And on to recommendations, just being cognizant of the time, if we can be as efficient as possible. We also have a substantial number of other business items we have to get to.
Absolutely, sure. So the Equity Audit recommendations, we don't necessarily have to read through them today. You'll see that these are the categories where we ended, and the question, Brooke, that you just asked shows up in bullet point 4, ongoing equity assessments and establishment of annual equity goals, so that we can increase response rates every single time, not just in the communities, but also a part of the staff for that matter, who also had relatively low response rates, right? When we're thinking about 35%. Policies and procedures, training and development, mission, vision, values, and communication. And then there's quite a bit on hiring and HR practices overall. So A is gonna wrap us up talking through our 3-phase approaches. Talking about the 3-phase approach. So what's next? The design team, and then we'll wrap up with next slides. So just 3 slides to go, and then we're all set.
Thanks, Jasmine. What Jasmine just covered, that was phase 1. So all of these findings and everything she did informed phase 1. Where we are now is phase 2. A portion of staff are completing the intercultural development inventory assessment. That'll be followed by coaching with Jasmine. With those staff team members, we'll be recruiting and launching a design team with the help of Skip and the core planning team. Those individuals will be responsible for leading this next phase of work to develop the equity framework based on these recommendations and continued information gathering. And then we're also going to do some learning tours as part of that, take a look at what's working in other systems beyond library systems, what strategies are working, and develop that plan together. So that'll be an iterative process with that design team, and Skip can talk more about whom is going to be involved in that team. And then phase 3, that'll be when we go into the trainings that Jasmine talked about, more of those coaching sessions with the IDI assessments and talking about transition planning. How do we actually implement the framework? I know this is all fast, so feel free to include any questions to skip. And then in terms of what's coming up directly next, we've got next week, the all staff meeting, which will share the findings with staff. We'll launch the design team later on this month or early July to get working on designing that framework with those recommendations in mind. And then we'll finalize the audit and that Jasmine just shared in recommendations report early July. So that'll be a full report, much more extensive than what was shared today. So with that, any questions from you all? I know that we're short on time, so also welcome you to filter those through Skip.
I would just add real quick, although this is my last board meeting, I think as we develop more of the recommendations, I think the presentation of that is very important for the board, especially in terms of if there's anything in being recommended in terms of policies that the board would need to adopt, or any specific, I believe, HR policies in the Maryland statute. That's what we're responsible to adopt. I would suggest to make sure that that's very concise and very straight to the point, just so that we know what's being signaled to us of what we should look at as a board. But would Mr. Alder or anyone else like to share anything? Hearing none, thank you very much, Dr. Lee. Thank you, Adriana. We will follow up if we have any other questions.
That's
Thank you
great.
so much. Can I just ask one question that I have, given what you just said for A? Is there someone from the Board of Trustees on the design team?
Not at this time, and if you
Okay.
want to recommend that we have someone on the board, we can do that. We did not. Let me just say, we've picked a dozen people, members of the existing library equity, diversity, and inclusion team, and we have 2 or 3 new members, and I'm going to be sending invitations to them tomorrow so that we can announce that on Tuesday at the all staff meeting. But I
Sure.
don't have a board member, and if you're recommending we get a board member, or if you would like to have a board member as a board, then I'm here to take volunteers.
Thank
You can
you.
send that to me as well as questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't recommend it, but if you all want one, then we should probably talk about it. So that's why I asked that question. So thank you so much. You all take good care.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, with that, I'm going to try to move as quick as possible. Chair's report. This is just more of a reflective moment for me. Skip, if you don't mind getting the citations. With my 2 years of you guys tolerating me as chair, quickly coming to an end, and ELT's email boxes are going to stop receiving 2 emails a day from me. I just really want to say thank you all for sticking it out as a collective board, and thank you to the staff, from our janitors who really kept the place afloat during COVID, to the people who answered questions for people who are looking to get help with their employment benefits or find food during the pandemic. I think sometimes we can lose sight of our overall mission and the impact we're making, but when you look at the fact that we dealt with a pandemic where no one had a rule book to go by. I remember my first call with Skip, and there was a moment of silence, and we're like, well, what are we going to do now? And transitioning to the fact that we were able to open up the Bush Annapolis Library, and we're going to open up a new location in Pasadena, then followed by the Glen Burnie, which I want to invite to Christine. That I think we can all take a step back and feel very proud of the work that we were able to accomplish under trying circumstances. Look, we were able to figure out Zoom. I remember we all struggled on how to unmute ourselves or so on and so forth, but we have persevered. I definitely want to thank Joyce, always available for any phone call that I have any question, and also to you, Rob, for also being a great second vice chair as well. Really had my back, and for someone who hasn't had a lot of professional experience, you guys have been very good. I joke with the mentor, I feel like Benjamin Buttons. I'm just going backwards in my life. So when I'm 65, that's when I'll finally do spring break. But I really appreciate not just only to everyone's experience, everyone's story, why you guys love the library, the different experiences you bring has been tremendous. To Donna and Joey, thank you so much for making sure that we have what we need. So once we come here, it looks flawless, because before it looks like a fire. Everyone's running around, change this around in the agenda, add this, take off that. But really, Donna, Joey, thank you so much for your help. And ELT, thank you for your professional expertise as well. It's good to know we didn't scare off Coven, Cedric, and Kathleen, and that they're still with us. And hopefully I convinced Cedric to become a Terps fan instead of a Princeton fan. But that's one thing I have to say I wasn't able to accomplish during my time as chair. I guess I'll take that as a loss. And also thank you to Skip as well. We talk sometimes Monday through Sunday, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, but it's going to feel weird not getting a call at any given time with God knows what's going on around in the library system. But it has surely been a pleasure to work with you, especially I'm happy to walk away from this and really have the assurance that the kindergarten readiness program is going to get started. I think that's very transformative for our mission. And if you look at in our county, less than 50% of kids entering kindergarten are at a reading level where they can really build. So I think for our partnership to help close that gap, we're opening a lot of opportunities to all sorts of communities throughout our county, and I'm excited to see where that will go. But I have citations for the last few members and who are also leaving. And what I'll do is I'll just highlight what I think is some of their great accomplishments, and I'll pass it on to Skip. The first one is my right hand, Joyce Miller, a veteran of both boards. She has served great on our board and on the foundation board as well. She always likes to tell the story that when they asked her to join the foundation board, she famously said, "I don't know rich people and I don't like asking people for money, but you have been a delight to work with, and I know the foundation really appreciates your service as well. And I wish you the best, and know that I will still call you from time to time. But I really appreciate our friendship and everything that you have done for me and for the library system overall." So Skip, would you like to say anything to Joyce?
Well, it's a watershed moment with Joyce leaving and of course many other trustees leaving over the past year, and the new ones coming on and everything. But yeah, you've been tremendous. Joyce and I shared some emails, and I think I said to you, I told Georgiana I wouldn't cry today. She says, "Don't cry." Anyway, we've shared some emails, and you know what I think of you, and I think the world of you, and you've been a tremendous support over the last 9 years, and I thank you for everything.
Thank you.
So I've been here 9 years, and I've really enjoyed working with you, Skip. We've been through a lot together, as we've wound up on top stuff. And I'd like to thank Will too. Will, you're amazing. I've really enjoyed working with you side by side. We've had many conversations and texts go back and forth. And if I had 2 words to describe Will, I would say he has a lot of moral courage. Moral courage is what that man has. You're going to do great in law school. We're going to be friends for life. I want to go to your wedding whenever you get married. I want to be
You're on the list.
Till death do us part. Okay, and I want to thank the executive committee, all of you, every one of you, and Donna too, for all that you've helped me through a lot of things. We've been through a lot together, And I'm still available to do things. Now I can pick and choose what I want to do. So please keep that in mind. And I want to thank Kathleen too. I worked hand in hand with Kathleen. It was very bittersweet leaving the board on Tuesday, and my flowers look beautiful. I put them on Facebook, and like there's been about 300 responses. So thank you so much. It all made me feel very welcome, and I feel like a lot's been accomplished, and it's very hard for me to leave this board, but I need some personal time. So thank you all so much.
Now, the following individuals aren't here, but definitely want to recognize Tanya Baruti for her great service as well. One thing I would say about Tanya is that her viewpoint, she offers such a diversity and different viewpoints on different issues. And when I have one idea, quite frankly, after Tanya would say something, my opinion will completely shift to the other end of the spectrum of what I'm thinking. And I think one thing I appreciate about her is her independence to think through tough issues and really arrive at a position where she feels that she can protect the integrity of our library system. And I think that is very important. Would you like to say anything about Tanya's service, Joyce?
I think I'm the one who got Tanya on the board, as a matter of fact. And I think it was because of the fundraising that we did. I think that I'm trying to remember how that happened. But anyway, Tanya, like you said, Will, she really thought about everything that was going down. And it had to be morally correct for the library for her to let it pass muster. And so I think she challenged us a lot with what we were proposing and whatnot. And we had to really, work it out with her to make it acceptable. And we wanted to, because she's such a good, strong board member. So, yeah, agree with you.
And Barbara, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, again, I'll just reserve comments to these three in person, because I do intend to give these to them. Tanya, Barbara, and Leslie, all three of them have been great to work with. Each one brings different strengths, which is kind of the value of this board. Each one of you who are here, whether you're on Zoom or here in person, brings some just wonderful talents and insights and different life experiences. So I'm just very pleased to be working with this board, which has already transformed in many ways since I was here 10 or 11 years ago to what I think is a very healthy situation.
And to that, I just want to recognize Barbara Maxwell. I think Barbara Maxwell may have done everything in this county that you can do besides being county executive. She was only county council. She has served us greatly over the last 14 years as a foundation board member and as a trustee. And her instincts as treasurer has been very helpful. And I know she appreciates her right-hand man, and that would be Cedric during her time as treasurer. So I know she would say that if she was here, that she really appreciated your help, Cedric. And I think we all wish Barbara the best as she enjoys full retirement, maybe from public service this time. As a recovering politician, I'm sure it's always hard to stay out of the limelight, but we thank her for her service. And also, we weren't able to fully recognize Leslie Anderson, who really provided a great viewpoint. I know her work on the cybersecurity ad hoc
Did
committee.
a lot of work on
A lot of work on that. It's not my forte, so to lean on her expertise and Rob's and Rudy and his team has been very valuable. And I think, no matter what or what commitments may have come up, she always put the library front and center. And I think we should all commend her for that. Is there anything else anyone would like to add, Joyce?
Oh, I'd like to say something I didn't get a chance to say. I want to commend Jan Elaine and Kathy Belcher and Christine, and I hope I didn't leave anybody out, for their diligent work and interviewing all the candidates. It was a daunting job, and I sat in on a couple of them. I couldn't hear too well, but they just did an amazing job. They put in an amazing amount of time, and I just want to say I'm really I'm so impressed with all of you on that committee. They just plugged away, and I'm also so thrilled that you included the question, are you willing to give to the foundation? Because we've never done that before. And it's such an important thing for board members to contribute to the foundation. Because if we don't contribute, how can we expect the community to? So it's not the amount that they contribute, it's just that they make a contribution. And so I was so glad to see that this was part of the process. But as I said, kudos to you, Jan Wayne, and to Kathy Belcher and Christine and Rob, you were on it too. I don't remember. All the
I just did a
people.
couple.
Okay, but yeah,
Since
that
I
was
was
on
able-
Wednesday.
Still counts.
I don't want to forget anybody who was on it, but amazing job. And you all should be so proud of yourself.
And Christine, oh my God, I'm so
Yeah.
grateful to Christine.
And no one else is allowed to leave for at least 2 more years. No, I think that's the rule of thumb. No, but thank you all for that.
So just one more. I had to find out from a friend of yours whether you even drink alcohol.
Trust me, after this, yes.
Well, I heard by secondhand, apparently your sister was able to tell one of your friends who I had checked with that Will likes a good red wine or a Chardonnay. So personally, I like Côte de Rhone. So I went to Edgewater Liquors and talked to a great sommelier today. He has a Côte de Rhone that I hope you will enjoy.
Thank you. And I will have to talk to my sister about that.
Yeah.
Because she was spot on.
And then I also, at the foundation board meeting, one of the directors brought up the idea that libraries are community centers, so much more than just about books. And I mentioned the book Palaces for the People. So I have bought you a copy of this book. It's a great book by Eric Kleinenberg. He's spoken at library conferences, and a lot of us have read this book or his articles, and I've inscribed it to you. I'll let you read that later. And in the meantime, we have a certificate for you. You can't read that now. And I'm just going to read this. This certificate of appreciation is awarded to William A. Shorter Jr. in recognition of your commitment to the Anne Arundel County Public Library over the last 3 years. With our deepest appreciation of your tremendous leadership as chairman of the Board of Trustees. The changes you instituted during your tenure will surely serve the board well into the future. For all your accomplishments and for your service to our county and state, we send our gratitude and we wish you continued success in your future endeavors. Signed this 16th day of June, 2022, Skip Hall.
You did double.
2 years as chair. No, but thank you. This is more than enough. It's surely been a pleasure to serve this county and our customers. But back to the people's business. That concludes the chair report. Foundation report. Your last report, Joyce.
It's fast. The Foundation Board held its annual meeting in May and unanimously reappointed Mary Haggerty, Tessie Ballard, and Linda Green to another 3-year term. They also approved the following slate of officers and executive committee members: Karen Smith, President; Linda Green, Vice President; Tessie Ballard, Secretary; Martha Blacksall, Treasurer; Katie Cook, Member at Large; and Mary Haggerty, Member at Large. The Foundation FY23 budget. The board approved $567,000 in library grant funding. The foundation provides private sustainable support from individuals, businesses, organizations, and foundations to support programs and services that aren't funded through public resources. Library grants enhance all 16 branches. The fiscal year 2022 funding continues to help improve programs and services that aren't funded through the county budget. In FY22 through June 30th, the foundation is expected to grant $475,000 in the following areas, with examples of the types of items purchased: better collection, better access, 55 hotspots, flip book, welcoming spaces, sensory and native gardens, carts, staff areas, technology, 4-in-1 branch use, smart boards, Chromebooks, thriving minds, programs, partnerships, and outreach, equipment and supplies, leaf blowers, and STEM kits. Read Between the Wines, held in May 2022, was a huge success with 288 people attending and over 50% were new donors. The event helps to introduce new donors and customers to all that the library has to offer. We encourage attendees to join us at other events and make a donation to support literacy in our county. For the love of the library, our largest fundraising event will be held on Friday, September 30th, 2022 at the Bush Annapolis Library. We are thrilled to bring this event back in person to show off our newest branch and raise funds to support our entire system. Foundation board members Katie Cook and Diane Ronaldo are the co-chairs. Tickets will be available in July, and our community is excited to attend. We expect to sell out. Corporate and individual partnerships are also available, which is a great way to deepen your support of the library's literacy programs to help ensure that our residents are lifelong readers. I hope that every library trustee will join me and attend this incredible event. Details about the foundation's events, activities, and ways to support the library are on our website, aacpl.net/foundation, where you can purchase tickets, register for events, donate, become a monthly donor, or leave a gift to your library you will. Mission moment. The following donor quotes illustrate the importance of the relationship between the library and the foundation and the impact that together we are having on our community. Quote, we have gotten much more from the library than we could ever get. From an AACPL system customer donor.
That's great. What was the date again? For the London Library?
September 30th.
September 30th.
Pretty sure I'm in San Diego.
I'll be in law school somewhere.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
It's Friday night. Hey, it's Friday night.
Oh, Friday then, yeah, I'm reading for the next week, of course. With that, if the treasurer's report, I can give that real briefly, and correct me if I'm wrong, our financial health is good.
Yes.
The state of the union is strong. With that, the report is also there. I think there's nothing abnormal that we need to review. I think the health of our finances are strong. If it's all right with you, Mr. Alden, your team members, I just want to get through the action items just in case people have to jump off for some ungodly reason. I want to make sure we have quorum. Is any objection to that? So starting with the consent agenda. Everything is there. There was two things in here that a committee wasn't able to approve. The first one went to the diversity and HR committee, and unfortunately, the committee wasn't able to meet, but that's the approval of the photography, filming, and recording policy. I don't think it's nothing conservative. It's just putting frameworks into place as to regulate that. The second one is adoption of the fiscal year 23 salary scale. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's a COLA increase and there's a merit increase for certain employees, correct?
Well, that's part of the budget that has been approved, but because of that, we want to move the minimum of all salary lines by the cost of living, which is the 4.5% minimum increase, and then the COLA, the merit increase is 3%. So we want the maximum to go up by 7.5%, and we're making this change really for the first time based on the PRM's compensation and classification study, where they said when you get these increases, move it so that people at the top of the salary scale don't top out, and take them along with the merit and COLA increases. So that's the change on that.
Perfect. So with that, again, this is consent agenda, and this is where the real magic happens, because once we vote on it once, it's all done. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Ms. Miller moves. Is there a second? Ms. Bruce, second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? Miss Alice, I didn't hear you.
She's on mute.
You're on mute, okay. I think we're good with the vote.
Kathy Belcher is like that.
I said aye.
Okay, good. So we still have one. Okay. Moving on to committee reports real quick. Finance and Audit Committee, I don't believe that they have anything to report on besides that they met and we just took care of the items during the consent agenda. Governance Strategy and Organization Committee, it is to my understanding that when we vote and we can add into the motion that the appointments will take effect at the conclusion of adjournment today. Ms. Smith, is there a trustee election report?
Yes. Our candidates are Danica Chambers from District 2, Tim Lemke from District 4.
Sorry to interrupt you. If you have it, can you differentiate if they're county appointed?
Yes,
So we can,
Yes, I can.
thank you.
Okay. Too many pieces of paper. Okay, the two county appointees that the county council has to vote on, but seemingly it looks like they will approve, are Ishani Gandhi from District 1 and Faith Steele from District 2.
Just note that Ishani Gandhi will be the at-large
Right.
nominee coming over from the
Yeah.
county.
Okay, and Faith Steele will be from District 2.
And Jan Lane, if I may.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, the county nominees are being elected today contingent on that council approval, which will happen in 2 or 4 weeks when county council has a chance to vote on it. County executive has already put their names in nomination, but it couldn't happen quickly enough for that.
So,
They were chosen from the candidates that we sent over.
so if it's all right, well, is it just 2 names?
Just 2 for the county.
Let's vote on those because they're contingent
Okay.
nominees. Is there a motion to approve the nominees contingent on their confirmation by the county council?
I so move.
Ms. Smith, well, since it's a committee report, we don't need a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Now moving on to nominees that are going to be self-elected by this board.
From the board.
Yes.
Again, Danica Chambers from District 2, Tim Lemke from District 4. Wait a minute, I lost him now. Chris Nelson from District 6 and Lonnie Summers from District 6. We had a long discussion about candidates, and Will advised me that rather than strictly sticking with the councilmanic districts, which we were trying to do, that we really should select the very best candidates. And we had, I don't know if you all realize, we had 107 people apply. They were fantastic people with great resumes. So it wasn't easy to whittle it down. But these 4 we selected based on their credentials and their interviews and the idea that they would work well with the library board.
And I think we all have confidence that you've done more than enough to do that.
Well, I sure hope so. So we have 4 names for the board and 2 from the county.
Yes, so now we can vote on the board. So are there any other nominations
From the floor.
from the floor? I move that we close nominations. Is there a second? Dr. Seconds. All those, I'm sorry, I know this is procedural. Welcome to my day job life. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Now, with the report, is there, well, we don't need it. You moved the nominees, so now the question before the body is to approve the trustees for election following adjournment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
You better.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Congratulations to our new trustees. I think we have a really great applicant. Now, officer election report.
Okay, can I say one more thing about these people?
Yes.
With the pool that we have, if anybody leaves in the future, we have people who have already given us their resumes, given us their letters of interest. And most of the people I interviewed said they'd be happy to, if they weren't chosen this round, anytime we have openings. So we've really created a great pool for library trustees. Okay, now for our officers. Our chairperson would be Chris Nelson. For those of you that don't know Chris Nelson, he was the president of St. John's College. He has just so much experience in managing committees and groups of people and policies.
Yes.
Yeah. First vice president will be Simona Simmons. Second will be Rob Sapp. Secretary Laura Ellis. Treasurer Kathy Belcher. God bless you, Kathy. And directors Daleks and Janeline Smith, who could not bear to be turned down another time when you ask somebody to be a director. So that's our slate.
Are we ready to vote on their prison
You have
sentences?
to ask, you have to ask, you have to ask if there are any nominations for the floor.
Are there any nominations from the floor? Hearing none, I move that we close nominations. Is there a second?
I second it.
Miss Smith seconds. All those in favor, just raise your hand at this point. Yes, Kathy, I'm sure you're an aye. Correct me if
I'm an aye, yes,
All opposed,
except for
nay.
the treasurer.
Well, you're outnumbered now, so. Any abstentions? Okay. Now to vote on the actual election of that. And the question is to vote on the officers at the conclusion of adjournment today. Is there, I move, well, we don't need that because it's committee report. All those, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Or signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstention? The motion carries. Congratulations on your one-year prison, terms as officers of the Library Board of Trustees. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Auld and Rudy. Now it's just up to you guys, so we don't stay here too late. Now my job becomes even more.
Okay, before you go, I have just two things to do. We're gonna do an update on the Mountain Road Library at a certain point, maybe after your two reports, Rudy. I wanted to mention two things. I've asked Rudy, along with Wanda and the other two regional managers, to lead a strategic planning effort starting in July, which will run in tandem with the equity, diversity, inclusion effort. And so I want you to be aware of that. And I'll be working with Chris Nelson to gain the trustee engagement with the strategic planning process. And I wanted to just let you know that this week has been a very challenging week. There is a campaign opposing our drag queen story time that's happening in this library on June 30th. So we've received probably it's the 25th. Okay. So we've received probably 2 or 3 dozen form letters in different ways. We also had a threat of a demonstration on this past Monday at the Park and Pride event to the point where someone took out a permit for a demonstration against that. But I want to read, and I'll try not to cry this one too, but a comment that we received today. I want to compliment you and thank you for the Park and Pride event this past Monday. What a good, wholesome, positive event. The organizers did an amazing job with something that can't be easy in the face of the rising tide of bigotry and ignorance. And yet they still pulled off something wonderful. I look forward to next year's event and any events in the meantime. Thank you so much. And again, my thanks to the dedication, skill, and courage of the organizers. So that's my CEO report for today. We've also had a Christine received an email from a person who writes something called Duckpin. He created the Red State, Maryland website, I guess you call it. His name is Brian Griffiths, and you may see his editorials or op-eds in the Capitol from time to time.
He does not work for the Capitol.
He does not work for the Capitol, but he's
Writes
given, yeah.
He writes.
Yes.
So Christine responded to his message explaining why we've done several events at the Mountain Road Library, and he immediately published that, saying that the library is now aligned with the left-wing organization, One Pasadena, which is actually a very inclusive, nonpartisan organization. So so anyway, wanted you just to be aware that these things are happening. Just as across the whole country, there are efforts to ban books and censor libraries and keep people from reading things or going to programs that they want for their families or themselves. It is happening in our county, so it's alive and well here. So I just wanted to mention that. And if you would like me to email you the link to the article, I'd be glad to do that.
I needed to ask, we have several people seeking renomination.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Do we need to vote on them?
Yes, because technically their terms will be up.
Okay, so those people will be Laura Ellis, Rob Sapp, James Estep, and Kathy Belcher.
Okay, the question before the body is, the sense, going through county nominations again, based on the contingency of confirmation from the county council, would the body approve the following nominees?
Kathy Belcher, Kathy Belcher, Jim Estep, Rob Sapp, and Laura Ellis.
Okay, is there,
And Brooke.
and Brooke?
Oh, and Brooke.
And
Oh,
we
I'm
can't
sorry,
forget Brooke.
Brooke.
Again, for another time for fun procedural votes. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Any objections or any nays, any abstentions, the motion carries. Congratulations.
Because we just, yeah, that was terms.
Okay. To that end, are there any questions for Skip regarding his report?
I have a question. What is the board's role in this demonstration that you were referring to?
Well, I'm the bouncer, right? I think I've already-
Yeah. So,
That's what it is.
So Brooke, I would say, I think you hire us to manage these situations, and we do our best to do that. To me, the board, in adopting the policies that you have, especially the policy on racial, I forget the name of it. It's just racial equity and social justice. It's a policy that was originally developed by the Urban Libraries Council that we've signed off on. And by adopting the program selection policy and the material selection policy, you give us the ground to stand on, to know that we have your backing as we try to sort of open our arms wide and be welcoming and provide things. Let me also put it in perspective, because you may get questions, any of you might get questions about why we're doing these programs. We serve everybody in our county. We have about 4,000 programs a year. So we have a few dozen or maybe 100 or so that are very focused, especially during June, on Pride kinds of activities. And actually, this is not a library program, but there is a program on critical race theory that the Human Relations Commission is going to do, I think, on the 22nd at Bush Annapolis Library. And that one has been challenged significantly. So just by you as a board collectively supporting intellectual freedom, I think that the policies you've developed give us the ground to stand on.
And before I hand it over to Joyce as well, before I forget, if this body receives any contact from media, I'd like to remind everyone, according to our bylaws, the only spokesperson for this body is the chair, and that will not be me also after today. So I think we have to be mindful when reporters reach out, they're reaching out to us because we're trustees as part of a bigger body, and we speak as a collective voice as well.
And we didn't take a vote on the people seeking renomination. Did we not have to vote on them?
We did vote.
Oh, we did.
Yeah,
We did?
yeah.
Oh, I thought we. Okay, God.
We just did.
If you want to vote again, I can call this one vote.
I just want to be sure.
Yes, sir.
All my T's are
Right.
crossed.
Yes, sir.
All my I's are dotted.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Skip, did you say?
I'd like to say one other thing too. This is probably not a conversation for today. I'm sure many of us have, have other plans. I'm extremely disappointed in that diversity, equity, and inclusion report. I think it was really pointless, to be honest. It didn't give us any information, I feel like, than we already know and already have. And I don't even know what discussion needs to be had about that, but it was very disappointing. And I guess I just have to put it out there. I think there needs to be some kind of discussion about how we get the information that we need. I mean, because we don't have it.
I'll allow Mr. All to respond. And then if anyone wants to make any last comments to that, but I know Joyce wanted to make some comments, and I want to honor that though, but I'll just put a quick pin in there. That may be a very good conversation for the HR and diversity committee to discuss with Skip and staff. And I think that's the most appropriate form at this moment, but I'll allow Mr. All to respond.
So Brooke, I have had one or two other briefings, but I have not seen the report yet, and I have not seen the recommendations. That's going to be coming to us in the next few weeks. So that's the first phase of it. And there are some significant recommendations that I have heard about, but I haven't seen yet. So I think that I would just ask us to reserve final judgment on the value of this until we have the actual report. I certainly will take that back to Jasmine and in our next discussions about this. But that's just where we are. I don't know if Kathy, you and Rudy both have been involved with some of the discussions and others on ELT. Do any of you have anything else that you can add to that?
I would have said what you said, which is my understanding is they gave an overview today. We're meeting with them tomorrow morning, and I think we're going to get a lot more detail. I hope to get a lot more granular detail. Because I agree we need to know more for sure. We can't act on anything they told us today, but I think they're going to give us more.
Oh, go ahead, bro.
Well, I mean, I think, where are these recommendations coming from? I mean, if that's the information that we have, anybody can throw out recommendations about how to increase diversity. Where is that? Where's the basis for what the recommendations are going to be? You're right. I recognize this probably isn't the right time or place, but I think it's really important that we press them on that. And I don't know how they gathered the data. I mean, they said surveys, but how hard were we trying to get surveys completed? And so I definitely think we need a lot more information on that. And
so Brooke, just I think that we had a lot of focus in the Q&A part on the surveys, but to me, the most significant part of it was the one-on-one conversations, the conversations in small groups, and then the 2 affinity group meetings that were held. So I think that there's, it's my understanding that there's a lot of information that was shared in those, especially the BIPOC and the LGBTQIA affinity group meetings. And those 2 meetings, I think, are the ones where the concerns were about the sense of belonging, the microaggressions and so on. So there's a lot of information that they received that will be forming the basis of the recommendations. And I think that the surveys, again, you pointed out earlier that we didn't get a breadth of we didn't get to the very communities want to, either on staff or from the customers in these surveys, but we definitely got it from the interviews that were done.
And just to add some type of conclusion and next steps to this, in my last act as chair, what I think is the most appropriate next step is, and I know, and if any members, I'm sure, are welcome to join any of the committee meetings, if the diversity and HR committee can meet at a time that is appropriate for everyone, with appropriate staff, and discuss any concerns regarding data or any of the processes that are currently undergoing to address everyone's concern. It seems like from trustees, there's a lot of concerns over data, what the data is reflecting.
Well, I'd like to look at the raw data, because I think I can
Okay.
tease things out of it that, she admitted that she was a qualitative person.
So, and I think before we go down a rabbit hole and when the recommendations are really released, if everyone can feel comfortable about that, I think that would help everyone on this project.
Well, I share Brooke's concern,
Yeah.
but it's really unfair to paint that until they have a chance to give us their
Yeah.
report. I don't understand what's scaffolding some of their findings, but it might just be that we didn't have time to discuss that.
Yeah.
So that's what,
Okay.
that's what it's.
Okay, sounds good. Ms. Miller?
Okay, Skip, did you say that this branch was going to be doing drag queens stories?
Yes.
Okay, so there were a lot of members of the board who may not be familiar with exactly what drag queen story is all about. And if it gets controversial, trust me, they will be asked about it by friends and other people. So maybe Christine, you could put out some points about it so people understand
What happens?
may not know exactly what it is, because, I mean, I got asked all the time about it, and when, I explained what it was and the purpose, then they were on board with it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it could be, it can, we all know what happens. It gets inflammatory and people, if we're asked to defend it, we have to know what it is. And I think we all know from the old board, but I don't know about the new, I call the new board, people who are here only 3 years.
So what's happening in the drag queen story time and the why we do this? Sure.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful too.
Because
Yeah.
people think we're recruiting, we're having a
Yeah.
presentation on recruiting.
Yeah. Right.
Really?
Yeah, right.
If you come in and see it once and you see how silly and how much fun it
No,
is.
but that's.
Right.
You know,
but
it's
everybody
just-
has to know that. They may not be familiar with what we've gone through. with
Oh,
drag
it's
queens.
so much fun.
And, I'll conclude by saying that with the work that, Kathy, Christine, and everyone on staff led by Skip, there is a lot of thought and attention to make sure that we deliver a great program to our community. And also, if you don't want to attend, no one is being
Don't come.
forced to attend
Don't
as
come.
well. This is anybody's complete option. You can come if you choose it. You can come if you don't. That's our rule of thumb with all of our policies here.
Because you will be asked about it. Trust me. If somebody knows you're on this board, you're gonna be asked about
Mountain
it.
Road Library has fishing rods.
Yes.
I don't like fishing. I think it's barbaric. But I really do. I just don't like it. I just don't like it.
There you go.
But I can't imagine an instance where I would think so much of myself that I could make that decision for our patrons.
Good for you.
Well,
The other thing for those of us that are new to the issues that you guys dealt with before me, before some of the other board members were here, I wouldn't mind a little blurb of how to answer, because I don't want to speak for the board on anything. And, I'm obviously not going to read line for line if I get asked, but I'd like to have some idea of how I'm expected to answer.
We created that for staff, so we can definitely send something to you.
I mean, that guy was a psycho.
And also, if you hear anything security-wise, we're living in times that, unfortunately, people's personal views really overwhelm them. That overwhelms them, and their passions lead to actions that can harm other people. If there's any chatter, make sure that we report it immediately to staff so that we can make sure everyone is safe. And if there's First Amendment rights protests, as long as people are doing it safe, just to make sure that all sides are complying with the law and we're doing everything to ensure the safety of our patrons, especially if there's kids in the audience too that may attend programming. I think we want everyone, regardless of what you're doing, to go home safely at the end.
Do we have security guards?
Yes. So I'm going to turn it over to Rudy.
Sir, both of the reports I was going to give are interim in nature. With the board's permission, we can defer these till the next meeting.
Okay, can you give just, if it's all right, just a quick sentence overview of each one so we can kind of get an update? I know the Niosh report is one of interest to this board in particular.
So we received the Niosh report. There were no surprises in it whatsoever. All of the recommendations that they offered, we are either already doing or we have a plan in place that we will not go some.
Okay, and I think the update in the fall, just the ones that are just being implemented should be there as well. Where's, would this report be posted on our website or the staff's
With your
website?
permission, that is one of the next steps we need to do. So if you want this posted on the staff website, we'll do that.
Is there any objection from this board?
All I can have.
Thank you. And also cybersecurity, thank you for putting together the one pager. Correct me if I'm wrong, will there be a cybersecurity specialist now to help?
There is. The context was changed. The
Yes.
board council approved a cyber budget, which includes cybersecurity specialists.
Nice.
We'll be hiring for that starting 1st of July.
Yes, and the reason why, for everyone following along, the reason why this was here was just, we want to make sure that we keep the board updated in terms of how we're developing our cybersecurity infrastructure and making sure we're providing a resilient, responsive.
So I just deployed a PhD in cybersecurity, the first fully online in the country. And I have 3 people that have worked with me on this degree. So if you need any help, Rudy, I am your guy. I would be happy to help you any way I can, even if it's just to write a job description or any of that stuff. Yeah, sure.
Mountain Road Library.
The council also approved our request for funding throughout the new Mountain Road Library. We have engaged the county's professional real estate agent to look for a new location for us. Because of course, these are negotiations. We don't want to discuss in mobile form. They do have a good need. We'll wait and see how that develops economically for the landlord. When we're ready to give that, when we're ready to get that information for the board, we'll also prepare something for the public as well.
My basement is available. I'm just tossing it out.
8,000 square feet.
I wish. I wish.
Is there any other business before this body? And Rob, since, you know, Joyce and I are running off into the sunset, you have the special gift of getting the
gavel to the new chair.
Yes, passing it off to there. So with that, there's no other business before this board. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry, point of personal privilege.
So just before he slams the gavel for the last time, he's going to pass the gavel, but he made a special request, which we honored, that he gets to keep this gavel.
Oh,
We have a brand new one.
I love it.
Brand new one that'll go to the new chair, but symbolically, please.
This is mine now.
So hit it gently.
Some second.
Second. Any objection? We stand adjourned.
We'll have a new one in the fall.
So when you become Judge Shorter.
Judge,
Right.
then I have my own.
That's right.